to socialism, for instance, capitalism says that why did Soviet Union decline? Soviet Union declined because it did not provide enough incentive for the people to work extra or be innovative. If you're giving same salary to driver and to a teacher and to a scientist, there is no reason why the scientist will work harder, better, or in a more creative way than say a driver. And that was the problem of socialism, where there's a parity in terms of salary. Innovation was not very well recognized. State did try to push innovation in Soviet Union, but that didn't work. So Soviet Union was left out when internet revolution, for instance, was taking place in the Western countries. So capitalism has to be innovative and capitalism has to re-innovate itself. Some of the crisis of capitalism, what you see today, the crisis is happening because you guys are not getting job. And you mean, I don't mean you, I mean youth employment is an important issue. That if youth number is growing in India, China, Brazil, everywhere, but if they are not getting the employment, so they will try to change the system. People were not happy with the Congress, so what did the younger people, youth of India did? They said that you are not providing us employment, we will not stick to you, we'll look for change. And sometimes change is worse than the previous thing. That same thing has happened in United States also. Trump is not a great leader in terms of very idealistic and characteristic and charismatic leader, the way one would have expected from a developed country to throw up. But Trump, they threw up because of anger, because of retaliation. People were losing jobs in the Midwest, what you call it, the Rust Belt, where industrial belt used to be there earlier. But the people from other countries were getting the jobs, Americans were not getting the jobs. So as a consequence, people started reacting against that system. So what is happening today? Now Trump is trying to restore manufacturing, restore industry, put more tariff, de-incentivize trade, disencouraging people from other countries. So those are the issues that are emerging because of capitalism. But also let me tell you that we should not completely say that capitalism is dead or capitalism will not survive. Capitalism as a mode of production, capitalism as a system, as an economic system of governance or economic system is very adaptive to changes. All right. Socialism sometimes has failed to adapt to the changes, but capitalism, in contrast, if you see the human history is a history of capitalism, right from the slave period until what you call it capitalist period. So capitalism is very adaptive, but forms of capitalism would be very different, and forms are very different. For instance, China is half capitalist, half socialist. You don't really know what kind of system, but China is also adapting, or you can also say that capitalism has adapted with socialism in a different form. Some of the European countries have very strong welfare model of economy, which is part of capitalism, but very strong incentive of welfare model. And capitalism has adapted to that. And some of the welfare models that you see in Finland, Latvia, Estonia, or Norway, Sweden, etc. So they have taken something from socialism, the welfare model. So they are saying, no, we'll not have equal parity, but we'll try to incentivize, support, provide support to people who are left out in capitalism. Modi ji, what he did? Modi ji said, we'll give 5 kg of rice, right? They made toilet to a lot of people. They gave free gas to women. So very elementary, it's very ridiculous in terms of what you call it welfare. This is nothing. But Modi, the government is trying to create its base, create a support system. What is happening? That is concentration of power happening in India, where some corporate houses are trying to, not trying, actually increasing the wealth, but at the same time, a state capitalism is also trying to adapt with the people by creating some. So what I'm trying to say is that capitalism will change. When it faces resistance of various types, it also modifies. It's not static. So capitalism, the form of capitalism would be very different in the coming years. That's what I'm. But do not think that capitalism will disappear. What is the alternative model available? Socialism has been debunked. Socialism as an ideology is not very strong in today's world anywhere. China is also not that way completely socialist. So capitalism will modify, that's what I'm saying. Yes, ma'am. Identify yourself. Sakshi. I think well, Trump will not be considered liberal at all. He is not. Essentially, he is what he can be called. He can be called a racist. Can be called a hyper nationalist. He can be called what you call supremacist. Can be called what else? Of course, kind of. Uh, uh, yeah, he supports the idea of political conservatism, anti-woke. Yeah, he's the leader of anti-woke, and he essentially is anti-liberal. And one of the threats, major threats of today's international, what you call liberal international order, is Trump himself, because he is not supporting uh, either NATO or European Union or Trans-Pacific Alliance, etc., which existed earlier. He is supporting who? He is supporting Putin, who is authoritarian, who does not believe in the what you call liberalism. He is supporting. He has good ties with all the strong leaders, be it Prime Minister Modi, Erdogan, Xi Jinping, a number of political leaders. And what he thinks, if you support these leaders, leaders who are sovereignist, so if you support them, they will weaken liberalism all over the world. And they think that there is some kind of unity at the level of ideas among the liberals. Why? Because liberals will support climate change. Liberals will support certain kind of this what you call anti-racism kind of sentiment. Liberalism will support some kind of equality between people, etc. So he is supporting these authoritarian rulers everywhere in the world, Trump, because he thinks that these are the people who will weaken liberalism, and they'll support the idea of political conservatism and the idea of sovereignty and hyper nationalism. And hypernationalism, the idea of strong sovereignty, is a threat to what you call liberal international order. So Trump is not insane, I'll say. You're right, he is a businessman. But I don't think Trump really understands international politics. And I don't think that Trump's policy will support US long-term influence in the long run. He's precipitating the decline of America in the global order. He is a symptom of that malaise which has emerged in American politics, where a person who is a part of Epstein file, I don't know if you have heard of Epstein file. Epstein was a sexual predator, and he was arrested. He committed crime, and he had abused several child, not one, and he was in jail. He committed suicide in 2019. And Epstein, a lot of rich people used to be very close, and they participated in the party which used to be thrown by Epstein in 2002 and earlier. He is that character. Trump, there are charges of what you call this molestation, etc. A lot of things are against him. I don't know whether that's true or not, but certainly he was very close to Epstein. But that kind of figure is being projected by younger youth population like you of America. Why? Because they are unhappy with the existing liberal order. They're unhappy with the what you call. They think that a small group of cabal, liberal cabal, the oak mindset people, they have started controlling American politics, and as a revenge, you are bringing in a person with a lot of vengeance, a lot of anger. So I say, I'll throw a person who can fix you, because otherwise a normal person will not behave like Trump. And that's why you have a person like Trump getting legitimacy in American society, where the education level is pretty high, democracy has strong roots, institutions are very strong compared to India, Supreme Court, etc. They are very strong. Anti-liberal media is still, liberal media like CNN, etc. is still very powerful, despite that Trump becomes the president of the United States. Yes, sir. Identify yourself. Uday. Zubair. And you are doing PhD. You are professor. Pursuing PhD. Okay. Well, yeah, your answer will come through my slides later. Second answer is coming. And second answer, like, what kind of order we are expecting. So I'll answer in the coming slides. So that's taken care of. The first part, that self versus other, whenever you try to create any identity, say what is India, your Hindu identity, Muslim identity, Bihari identity, Bengali identity, Tamil identity. So whenever you're trying to create an identity, there are two essential components of that identity. You versus other, self, core versus other. So any identity has to be based on internal glue factor and the external, the differentiating factor. So whenever you say West, for instance, West cannot be understood unless until there is something which is non-West. Or East cannot be understood unless until there is something called non-East. Men cannot be understood unless until you have something called women or non-man. So our knowledge is very comparative, and similarly identity, the way it is understood, it is comparative. So there's a self, and so that's the first part of what Jan Bremer is saying, and I completely agree with that. So whenever you try to create an identity, there has to be othering of the others. इंडिया तब तक नहीं हो सकता जब तक पाकिस्तान और चाइना होगा ना, so उसका रहना जरूरी है, नहीं तो इंडिया का क्या मतलब. So anyway, so that's the argument, and to the second question, we'll come to that. Yeah. Anything else? So we should move now, yeah. All right, and now I'm kind of preempting some of the arguments which might come tomorrow if Professor Acharya comes here and speaks. But he has written a book on global international, the making of global. This is the title of the book, as you can see here, the making of global international relations. This book came in 2019, and the chapters which were relevant from my perspective, I think they were the last 2 or 3 chapters of the book. So what he says is very interesting. And you can note down and discuss with him tomorrow. So he said Brexit and Trump, Brexit earlier and Trump. This book came in 2019, so he's talking about the first term of President Trump. So Brexit and Trump heightened the sense of big transition to a post-Western IR which is underway. All right. He says that these are the symptoms. Brexit, that Britain deciding to move from European Union. So that is a sign why the post-Western order is emerging. And Trump, a person who does not believe in any of the liberal ideas on which the dominance of the West rested. So that is a sign of what he calls a transition to post-Western international relations. Although his book is about, mark the term, what he's saying, global international relation. Global internationalism. The term, that's the title of the book, The Making of Global Internationalism, that's the title of the book. So what he's saying is very interesting. He's saying you don't have to make an IR which is Western or non-Western. IR cannot be Western or non-Western. So he talks of global IR, an IR which is very inclusive, an IR which is very multipolar, IR which includes different societies and different cultures. So that kind of IR he is talking about. A new world ought to be, according to him, the new world ought to be post-Westphalian. So Westphalian system is what? It is identified, sovereignty is important, and territoriality is important. Territory is important, sovereignty is important, nationalism is important. So he says that the post-Western, what you call it, will not be post-Westphalian, in the sense that sovereignty will remain an issue. India as a country, US as a country, that country, nationhood, sovereignty will remain important. So sovereignty would remain a defining feature. Do not expect European Union to emerge or supra architecture in the form of some kind of supranationality. So that is not going to happen. But according to him, and these are not my words, these are the two authors, Amitav Acharya and Barry Bujang. They have written the book together. So it will unquestionably be post-Western. So he agrees with the term post-Western. He says that it's going to be post-Western, not in the sense that the West will disappear as Rome disappeared, but that it will become just one among several centers of wealth, power, and cultural authority. I'm repeating the sentence again. He says that post-Western world is going to happen, but it will not happen in the sense that the West will disappear. No, that's not going to happen. West will remain as one of the centers of power, wealth, and culture. So there'll be other centers. West will remain one of the power centers in the world. So that's what he's trying to say. Since he is not a realist, he is more like a constructivist, and now he has taken the historical route means that his method is much more historical in the writings if you read. So he says that it will not be like realist multipolarity. In realism, as you know, multipolarity means different centers of power emerging. So it will not be the realist multipolarity. It will rather be cultural and yeah. So several centers of wealth, power, and culture. So he also brings in culture as a variable, which in realism only power and state, population, military power, these are the variables used. He brings culture as a factor when he talks about multipolarity. So there are multicultural centers. According to him, one important thing, and that's a remarkable contribution in my view, he says that apart from sovereignty, etc., non-state actor, non-state actor will play an important role in the new world order. So answering Jubair's question, Jubair, these are the changes that you'll see in the post-Western, according to Amitabh Acharya. So non-state actors, who are the important non-state actors? Non-state actors would be apart from, I'm not referring to just NGOs and say corporate agencies. Say for instance, the GDP of Apple is more than the GDP of 70% of the countries of the world. The GDP of Nvidia, the semiconductor company, is more than the GDP of hundreds of companies of the world. So we are now GDP of Ambani would be much bigger than many of the countries of the world. So we are talking about that corporate dominance in the world. So non-state actors, they are not the state actors, but they play much more powerful role compared to many of the states in the world. 80% of the states will not play as powerful role as a CEO of one company will play. So in that sense, that multinational corporations will play. And he says that multinational is not the only non-state actor. In many places, say for instance, West Asia, Al-Qaeda for instance, many of the extremist organizations in many places, they will play important role. Similarly, some of the organizations which become powerful, climate change, on democracy, etc., they will also play important. So non-state actors will play important role in what you call post-Western world order. According to Amitabh Acharya and Barry Bujan. Barry Bujan is English professor. Non-state actors will play, this will be, according to them, this will be a global system, but one without superpower. So what you have seen from 1991 until now, that there is American superpower, right? America is a superpower and China is aspiring superpower. India is aspiring superpower. He says that this will be a global system, one without superpower, and containing several great powers and many regional powers. So there will be great powers. In a state of superpower, you'll have great powers, like China will be a great power. India, the country that you live in, India will also be a great power, right? But you will not have superpower. अमिताभ बच्चन नहीं होगा. अब बाकी जो लोग जो होंगे ना, सलमान खान, आमिर खान, उस टाइप के बहुत सारे एक्टर्स होंगे जो ग्रेट एक्टर्स हैं, बट super powerdom is over. And there are various levels, the various levels which are used to describe, to characterize the emerging world order. So some of them, they call it plurilateralism. For instance, Kendry, he calls it plurilateralism. Heteropolarity, according to Darian. Kupchan calls it no one's world, no one's land, no one's world. Multimodal. Amitabh Acharya, who is coming to speak tomorrow, he talks about multiplex. Your hall is like multiplex. Multiplex means when you go to a cinema hall today, so you have multiplexes, 3, 4 together, and they all in one hall you'll watch this movie, on the second you can watch second movie, third movie. So it would be like multiplex in a mall that you see in today's context. This theory, multiplex, has not become very popular, but this is the argument of Amitabh Acharya, and you're likely to listen to him tomorrow. He also talks about the idea of, some of the people also use polymorphic globalism. Karjanstein, a constructivist scholar, he says is much more like polymorphic. Multi-order, some of the people call it. So these are the broadly terms which are used by various scholars to describe the new world order which we're going to witness in the coming years. Amitabh Acharya again uses a term called embedded pluralism. Embedded pluralism, what is that? That main player will tolerate the material, cultural, ideological and active type of differences of other countries. So basically America will tolerate, or any country which becomes a great power, so that country will tolerate the differences and the culture, ideology and pluralism of other states. So that is what he means by embedded pluralism. In terms of state, as I said, there will be no superpower, but a system dominated by great powers. What does he mean by great power? Great power, he means that great power can exercise influence beyond its own region. For instance, India's region is South Asia. If India becomes a great power, India can influence Southeast Asia, India can influence Latin America, so if you can influence politics, economic policy in other regions, so that would be the definition of great power. And third category would be regional power. For instance, Brazil, according to him, is likely to be a regional power, which means it will remain dominant in the region, but it will not play much decisive role beyond the region. Russia, for instance, today, Russia is an important great power because Russia plays a role in Eurasia, but Russia also plays an important role in other parts of the world, South Asia, Southeast Asia. So it remains a great power despite its very low economic size. According to him, do not think that great powers would be like what you have seen UK during the colonial period or United States during the post-World War II period. So that kind of world you are not going to see. And history is an important way to understand the future. Future cannot be understood without a sense of history, but at the same time, history is not the best guide to understand the future. Why? Let me give you an example that what you have seen in the history is not cyclical. That's a wrong way of understanding history. Vedic period never repeated itself. Monarchy that you saw in the form of Ashoka, Gupta, Akbar, Aurangzeb, that will not be repeated ever, right? So do not think that what you have seen in the history is going to be repeated. Many of the scholars in India, they love this idea because India was a great power in 17th century, contributing 26% of the global economy. China was a great power in 17th century, contributing about 21% of the global economy. So we can learn from how India behaved or China behaved in that period to understand how these countries will behave in the future. That's a wrong way of understanding future, because what you have seen in the past, future is never like that. So do not think that past can be the right guide. Yes, past makes you understand, but do not depend on the past and do not use past as a prism to understand the future. Yeah, so Amitabh Acharya again says that some non-state actors will acquire the power to challenge or ally not just with the other, but also with the states. Great powers that will dominate. Another term that they use, great powers that will dominate the GIS means global international society. Great powers that will dominate the GIS in the decades will be inward looking to the point of being autistic. And inward looking. Inward looking means protectionism. Inward looking means I'm not concerned about what is happening in Iran. That's none of my business. What does India say? India says that what is happening in Iraq, what is happening in Russia, Ukraine, that's a European problem. Jaishankar said a statement that that's a European problem. That's not my problem. What is happening in Iran, that's not my problem. So great powers are likely to behave like autistic. What is autism? Autism in the child, when autism happens, that you cannot process the information what is happening in the surrounding. You don't know how to respond to that. So you kind of, you shrink yourself inside and you behave according to whatever you think is the best. So that inward autistic behavior of the state, that's what they are talking about the future role of the great power. There are three predictions about the global international society in the coming in decades, according to them. The first is that we are entering a period of deep and sustained transition. Transition is happening and that's very deep. So you do not dismiss the fact that transition is not happening. Anybody is saying that the West will remain the way it was, that's a mistake. That's a false understanding, and or maybe just a propaganda. Second point, according to him, is that what is emerging will not be any form of the back to the future. The same thing what I said, back to the future means, you are not going to see monarchy, you are not going to see the revival of Vedic period, despite all the claims of revival of Vedic period or Mughal period or whatever. You are not going to see that revival again ever, because that has already happened. The world is going to be very different from what you have seen in the past. Third, that is the emerging global international society will display a deeply pluralist structure layered between regional and global levels. So it means that some of the powers will be great powers and some of the powers will be regional powers, and the world would be decided by those kind of powerful states. What you call post-Western order would be decided by countries which have regional influence and countries which have global influence. But you do not have absent superpower. So that you need to keep in mind if you trust these two scholars. Political shift is away. Yes, again, in terms of shift of the politics, uh, what we have seen until now, 20th century was dominated by what kind of ideology? Left versus right. Left, center, right. That was the political division throughout the world broadly. But what they say is very interesting. They say that in the future it's not going to be left, center, right. राजन लेफ्ट का है, जेएनयू से आ रहा है, सर बेग सर अलीगढ़ से हैं तो वो राइट के हैं, ऐसे नहीं चलेगा, है ना? Left, center, right, that's not the kind of political spectrum which will determine the politics of the coming years. According to him, new tension, ideological rift will emerge between inward-looking protectionist nationalism and nativist identity versus those who favor open societies and globalization. Now, where do you locate yourself, sir? Where do you locate yourself? इन दोनों में कहाँ पे locate करते हैं? How many of you, please raise your hand, how many of you locate yourself with the open societies and globalization? How many of you think that that is the idea which should be promoted? How? Please raise your hand for the open world. Quite a bit. Please raise your hand for protectionist, inward-looking, and nativist identity. How many of you believe that that's the identity which should be promoted? Only one hand. Yeah. So nativist. All right. So many of a large number of people, you don't know what kind of support I should provide to the system. Yeah. So sir, in your class, there is one person who is nativist, and good number of people who support the idea of open and globalization. But there are also a large number of students, or the large. I'm not judging them because I'm open to all the ideas. But a good number of people are also undecided. So they don't know whether to support this or whether to support that. All right. Coming to Jubair asked me, or who asked me? No, he asked. Yeah. So will capitalism remain a dominant feature or not? The consensus around global market capitalism is notable, with all of the great powers and many of the regional ones now being in some significant sense they are capitalist. Be it China, be it large number of countries in the world, Russia, India, whatever country you see, mostly they are capitalist. A good number of scholars, if you rely on the secondary reference to take the argument, so large number of scholars, Amitabh Bhujan, Stunkel, Jakaria, number of scholars, they agree that capitalism will continue in modified form, in separate form, different form, but capitalism as a system is likely to continue. But what is going to change is neoliberal capitalism. A neoliberal capitalism that was the big winner of the Cold War is entering a substantial crisis. Inequality is underpinning its political legitimacy, and automation and globalization, your argument, Jubair, किसने वो Jubair बोला था? So automation and globalization are undoing its model of wealth distribution through mass employment. So the claim that capitalism can generate employment, neoliberal order is going to create equality, some kind of removing disparity, will solve some of the problems of the world. So that is not happening. As a consequence, neoliberal capitalism is under crisis without any doubt. Capitalism's addiction to growth as the necessary condition is a challenge that capitalism has to adapt itself to. Inequality, AI, environmental crisis, they are also raising the concerns about the kind of growth that we are having, the kind of, and younger people, younger people are much more pro-environment, much more pro-globalization, rather than older people who tend to be very nativist and supporter of protectionist ideology. Now, ये ना तो अमिताभ आचार्य ने बोला है तुम्हें, और ना ही अस्टंकल ने बोला है, ना ही who else I quoted? ब्रेमर. ये इन तीनों का आइडिया नहीं है, ये मेरा कंट्रीब्यूशन है. So what you see that what we are going to witness, and I'm pretty sure about it, talking from India, and I have studied Russia very closely. I also do a comparative study of sometimes Russia, China, India. So I can tell you with the guarantee that you are going to witness very powerful force in the form of what you might call it civilizational state. In fact, now after this lecture, I want to write a book on civilizational state. So I have a background in history, so probably I should do that. So the idea of civilizational identity has gained momentum in the non-Western states. I can tell you with guarantee, Russia is the biggest promoter of civilizational state. China is still conscious. China promotes Confucianism, but China also promotes socialism of some form. So China is cautious, but Russia is a great supporter of the rise of civilizational state. Russia says that I'm different from the West because we are a civilizational country. We are not like the Western country who see their origin from just few hundred years. We are not like America. America has a history of only 300, 400 years. We are a civilizational state, so we should have a different kind of policy. And Russia also has a conference promoted by the state called Dialogue of Civilizations, and they have it in Greece or some other places where they invite scholars from India, China, Brazil, Africa, West Asia to discuss the idea of what he calls a civilizational state. So this idea is going to be very popular in India, Russia, China in the coming years. So what are the core arguments of this idea? Number one, there is a civilizational continuity and historical depth. So please, they say that we are not like America. America is a country, new country. It does not have any culture. It does not have any civilization. The woke mindset, the gay mindset is very popular in America. That's what Putin says. It's not my quote. Putin says that we cannot accept that kind of lesbianism and gayism, what you see in the Western country. We do not want our Orthodox Christianity. Russia is an Orthodox Christian state. So we do not want our Orthodox Christianity to be corrupted by the Western idea of liberalism. That is the kind of argument. Yeah, and it calls itself a civilizational state. And according to Russian civilization, the core idea is the Slavic national identity. And what is the basis of Russian nationalism? Orthodoxy, authoritarianism, and nationalism. That's how they say how Russia is different. Orthodox Christianity is not orthodoxy, it's Orthodox Christianity because they have separate church, that some of the rituals are very different. So they are Orthodox Christianity, Slavic identity, Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus. These are the Slavic countries, and they identify themselves as Slavic identity. So that idea is very popular in Russia. India, I'll not be, if you want, I can go into details, but India is also claiming to be a civilizational state. If you see minister, for instance, what is the book that minister is writing, external affairs minister? Bharat, why Bharat matters? Bharat, India se bhi change ho gaya Bharat, है ना? The India way. And if you read why Bharat matters, so what is the reference point coming from? The reference point is coming from Hanuman. He says that in his argument, in his book, what he says, that Hanuman does not know till the time he is made to realize that how powerful as an entity you are. And he compares that with India. That he says that India does not realize how powerful it has become because he's ignorant like Hanumana. So that is the kind of reference point that you are seeing now. And in JNU, in many places, the idea of civilizational state is becoming extremely popular, but there is a debate. In India, there are two types of civilization people are talking about. One civilization is based on Hindu majoritarian national identity, in which most of the references will come from Hindu sources. But other civilization, they'll talk about much more, which is inclusive, which is secular, which takes from history, but it also takes from Hinduism, Christianity, Buddhism, different parts. So that there is a debate, what civilization are you talking about? You getting me? So, and people are clearly divided on the civilization lines. So depending on what kind of idea is being promoted by a certain organization, you can consider. But idea of civilizational state is largely now, it has consensus in India, and most of the scholars from at least right and liberalism, they have accepted the idea of India as a civilizational state. This is also viewed as an alternative to Western universalism. All right. Why? China's Confucian meritocracy plus communist party rule, that is considered a very Chinese socialism with Chinese characteristics. Russia's the idea of sovereign democracy. Russia says that we are sovereign, we are democracy, we don't believe in the Western democracy, and we do not seek any interference from other countries. US will not decide, France and Germany will not decide what kind of democracy we want to have. So the idea of sovereign democracy is promoted by Russia in the name of what it calls civilizational state. India's Hindu civilization nationalism. So that's again one of the important features that you know. Cultural sovereignty and resistance to external interference. So this is very no, self-explanatory. These states defend the right to be different, often resisting human rights critiques, liberal individualism, or global media narratives. They say that we are different. We do not have to follow the Western ideas. We are civilizational states, so we should retain our cultural sovereignty. They also argue for multipolarity in a global order, and for very obvious reason because they are not happy with liberalism. So they argue for multipolarity in the global order. Russia would be a power, China would be a power, Brazil would be a separate power, India. But there is a challenge. So the challenge here is that how will Africa identify itself? If you are an African scholar, which civilization are you talking about? Because it's such a hybrid civilization there. Christianity, uh, uh, Islam, and some in places paganism, some Hinduism. So how will Africa identify as a civilizational state? That's the challenge. And unless until you theorize universe, you cannot have. So civilizational states will argue for its exceptionalism, it will argue for its sovereignty, will argue for its differences. But to develop a theory of civilizational state is a challenge because, as I said, American scholars will not agree to it. African scholars will not find kind of particular civilization what others claim. So there is a challenge when it comes to theorizing. But yes, for India, you can certainly argue that India will be a civilizational state, and that argument will become very popular in the coming years. While the rising past and the critique argue that while the rising past may be rediscovering their cultural roots, they are also inescapably fusions. They are hybrid. India is neither east nor west. It's a fusion kind of thing that has emerged. I'm speaking here in English language, right? You are doing your dissertation. So I'm dressing up like a a Western person. So it's a very fusion kind of culture that you see in India. Modernity is now woven into the social, economic, and political fabric that, and just as for the West, is essential to their pursuit of wealth and power. Rising powers thus represent cultural fusions quite different from their pre-modern form. So some of the critics argue that what we see is a fusion in India, China, or Russia. It's not exactly Eastern, it's not exactly Western, it's a fusion which has emerged. Now, just 2, 3 slides and I think I'll be done. Persian, Persian Empire, yeah.
Turkey is going to reassert the Muslim identity or the you can say Christian, Greek, or the pagans identity.
Yes, sir. Turkey never identifies, at least today's Turkey, modern Turkey. If you've been there, it's a very hybrid kind of culture. I've been there twice, thrice, lived there for a month also. So Turkey's identity is primarily Islamic identity. If you talk of Shia Sunni divisions, so primarily Sunni identity, but it's not about yeah i- future. I'm talking about the future. Yeah. So the path. No, Turkey is today's Turkey is they identify as Islamic country, but again they identify much more with Ottoman Empire rather than previous empire. So today's what I call the revival of. So they are not concerned about what happened in the before the Islam coming up. That's one part of it, but some kind of the way Ottoman Empire played a very prominent role in West Asia, in parts of Europe. So basically, when it talks of revivalism, it talks of Ottoman revivalism, which is Islam dominant, but it's like a political Islam. It's not necessarily the Islam that you see in many places. So essentially, Ottoman revivalism. Russia, sir, is a unique country. In the case of Russia, the way Russia identifies itself in terms of civilization, it says that Russia is an Orthodox Christianity, and Yes. Yeah. Yes. 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 Sir. So what? Yeah. So when you go back to history, sir, and countries go back to history. Historians of the country go back to very selective past. When India tries to revive, say, for instance, civilization, India does not go to Indus Valley civilization. India goes to what? Very selective past of the. I want to revive the Vedic period. I want to revive the golden age of Guptas. I'm not reviving Indus Valley period. I'm not even reviving Buddhism. India became a very powerful empire, not empire, but the most influential country during the Buddhist period. Your, your spread was from Afghanistan, Central Asia, till what do you call it, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. But have you seen any attempt by India? But yeah, so but today's India, today's history is not being seen from the perspective of Mughals, right? When the other party comes to power, the other ideology becomes dominant. That might be an attempt, but at this moment, they're interested in reviving core identity, which, according to the government and most of the historian, they would focus on Hindu, majoritarian, national, not even Buddhist. Forget about Buddhism is part of it, but they'll not consider Buddhism as a separate identity. So, so that's the challenge, and that's how you define civilization according to your selective interpretation of history, and not very wide and real sense of the history. So, same in the case of Turkey. Russia again considers itself as a Slavic country, as a country which is Russian Orthodox Christianity, which is different from, as he rightly said, Catholics, and definitely different from Protestant. So they identify somewhat with the Greek church, Eastern Greek church, but the symbol of Russian church is not like cross here. It's like tilted here, like this. So they also have a different symbol. If you go to Russian church, they have, yeah, the symbol, and so, and now they are the main country, kind of savior of Russian Orthodox Church. Orthodoxy, nationalism, and authoritarianism. These are the defining features of Putin's policy when he talks about revival of Russian Orthodoxy or Russian. That's a very interesting question, sir. And we had part of this discussion during the chai chai break. No, we had this discussion, I said. But West is a very, again, contested concept. The definition of West that I gave you in the first slide was the post-colonial Edward Said's definition of West. But the West itself, I was reading just a few days back, the way West was defined, even there is a division in European country between the West and the East. So when the Roman Empire, the biggest empire of Europe, it is split into the western part and the eastern part. And gradually eastern part came under the influence of Islam when Greek, etc., fell to the Islamic ruler. And the western part remained the Christian. So when they refer to the West, the idea of West, it has come from there also. There is a division in Europe between West and East. But definitely the political division, geopolitical division of West and East came with Russia, let me tell you. Because Russia was always considered a backwater of Europe. Russia was never considered the West. Russia, even during the Peter the Great, Russia always aspired to be a country of the West. Even Gorbachev wanted what? Gorbachev wanted Soviet Union to become a Western state. Yeltsin, when he was the president of Russia, first president of modern new Russia, so he wanted Russia to become a West country. Sad part is West never considered Russia as a part of the West, because Western countries, they think Russia is East. Russian culture is very different. Political conservatism has always remained a dominant feature. When Bolshevik, when this what do you call, uh, French Revolution was happening, all the countries of the Europe went towards what? Uh, they went towards democracy or some kind of. Russia remained a Tsarist state, very powerful, controlled Tsarist state till 1917. So they always treated Russia as a some other, as a distinct identity. As a consequence, the Russian, even Dostoevsky, the famous writer of Russia, he wanted Russia to become a Western state. All right. So he says that that, but what Russia thinks is very interesting. Russia thinks that we do not want to be the slave of the West. We want to be the master of the East. You getting me? Russian complexity. They think that with the West you cannot compete, so let's not become the slave of the West. Let's become the master of the East, because that time when this kind of idea was being propagated, the East was not a very developed. Today China is far more developed than Russia. India is likely to be much more developed than Russia. So today, East is not the country which can be enslaved. But yes, that kind of mindset Russia has. So Russia considers itself to be a Eurasian state and not a Western state, not a European state. Aspiration of Russia, Russian, like all of you, they want to go to West. Let me tell you, they want to settle in Germany. Most of the Russian they today want to go to US and study and settle there. So the aspiration is there. But Russian identity, because they have been always been rejected by the West, they consider themselves to be a Eurasian state and not the European state. He has written such tough words, it's not easy to understand. But yeah, I got your question. Yeah, no, it's an optics, you are right. But it can be used by both. One is that it can be used to project the identity as a majoritarian religious identity. That's one aspect of it. But if I write a book, say for instance, on civilizational state, I'll not project that identity. I'll project an identity which is much more inclusive, which is much more secular, which is much more diverse, which is embedded in what you call embedded pluralism, rather than an idea of civilization which is just dependent on one particular culture and very selective highlighting of or selective interpretation of history. So civilization can be interpreted both ways, depends on how you take it. Absolutely. One aspect of is definitely what you were saying. Uh, Majority of the people in Russia, China, India, they would like India, China, Russia to be identified according to the majoritarian culture. But also remember that that majority shifts according to change in the political regime. Majority is not constant. What you consider to be a certain identity, that will change after some time. So that would be contested by a lot of people in all the countries. For instance, when Sasi Tharoor is writing on civilizational state, he develops a critique of civilizational state. And he says that how this idea is problematic because of these reasons. Yes, sir. Identify yourself. Nasib. Najir. Very interesting question, and that's what I have tried to answer in most of my presentation today. The rest has not become as powerful in terms of its ideational influence, in terms of its political influence, in terms of its material influence. Number one, because we're still at the stage of transition. The transition has not reached its ultimate phase of, when you reach a point of destination. So we are in a stage of transition where these countries are becoming important, but they have not become very powerful. Compared to US, for instance, 26, 27 trillion economy, India's size is what? 4 trillion economy, right? China is still 16 trillion economy. So we have not reached that stage, number one. Number two, we do not have the kind of unity the way the Western countries have it in terms of religion. Most of the G7 countries are Christian, right? most of the G7 countries are democracy. So there is a political unity. Most of the G7 countries are colonizers, including Japan. So we do not have that kind of unity. In the rest, what you have China on the one hand, which is authoritarian, India democracy, South Africa democracy, and then you have Russia, which is authoritarian. So it's very diverse, different kind of political system, absence of shared history, and they do not agree on many of the ideas also. All right, so the diversity plays a role why the rest has not become as important as what you call it West. So yes, I think in my view, the rest will not become an analytical category the way the West was in the last 20 or 50 years. So the rest will again remain diverse. What they will do, they will come together to minimize the power of the West. That's for sure. They are doing it in the form of what? They are doing it, for instance, in the form of what you call it BRICS. What BRICS does, so it weakens some of the influence of the Western country by saying that we can bring a new currency. Although BRICS is not bringing a new currency, let me tell you. But the idea that they can trade in the local currency, so which means that becomes a threat to Trump. And Trump says what? Trump says, I'll put 100% tariff on the BRICS countries. If BRICS was irrelevant, if these countries were irrelevant and coming together was nothing but the talk shop, then why do you say that BRICS countries will be put under sanction or there'll be tariff would be 100%? You getting me? So it is threatening the dollar. It is threatening many of the Western institutions. So these institutions, in my view, will become very powerful. And when I started writing on BRICS, I have written a book on BRICS just 2-3 years back. So when I was writing on BRICS, even Indian scholars, many of the Indian scholars didn't believe that BRICS can become an important. My dean, Manoj Pant, he got very upset with me because I was saying that BRICS will become powerful 10 years back. Manoj Pant, who is an economist, international trade, he said that, no, I don't agree with you at all. BRICS will never become a cohesive force. BRICS will never become an important organization. But today we can't say that. Why? Because Trump is threatening. Trump is threatening, which means it is becoming a threat to the West in some way. He said that Mexico can never become a country interested in BRICS. Mexico today is interested in becoming a member of the BRICS. Despite Mexico has a huge trade, 700 billion trade with United States, NAFTA. So what I'm trying to say, these institutions will become powerful and gradually they'll erode some of the legitimacy, some of the influence of the Western institutions. And that's why they are a challenge to the West. Technology, sir, technology again as both integrating and disruptive factor. I'm not an expert on technology, but yes, do not think that technology is playing any less role. Technology is playing much important role than what we can perceive of. Today, artificial intelligence, as all of you are using ChatGPT, sir, all my term papers in my university, they are coming from ChatGPT. We have software also to check it, but again, students do it and they humanize it now through other software so that we cannot detect. So that's a challenge. So technology is an integrating force because you can access data, you can access information from various parts of the world within a minute, but also it's a disruptive force because fake news is spread like wildfire. People are much more people are consuming fake news much more than what you call important news. Most of the information that you are acquiring today, most of you may not be watching the news channels. All of you are watching some of the reels of on WhatsApp, Instagram, and whatever social media that you're using. So that is a challenge. Retaining attention, sir, 3 hours lecture, how do you manage it in the age of reels when people are interested in just 1 minute reel? So the fact that you guys are listening to me, I feel really proud and privileged because retaining that attention for 3 hours is an impossible task in today's world. So I'm not getting into technology, but yeah, technology is an important thing that you need to keep in mind. What are the new ideas and institutions that will continue? Sovereignty will remain, in my view, sovereignty will remain a defining feature of a new area. So do not think that even if, see, countries will not remain the same. Let me tell you. India, for instance, if you see 17th century India, 18th century, 19th century India, and 20th century. In every century, the territory of India has changed. Every century, I'm saying. Just check the map in the last 20th century, India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh separated. So India's territory has, So territories might change, some new territories might come, some territories might go, but sovereignty as a concept will remain important irrespective of the world that you see today, see in the future. Immigration of people will continue. I'm not saying that immigration will not, but the model of immigration would be much more like Dubai and Jeddah, where you go, work, and come back. You will not be citizen there. In US and UK, it's going to happen the same in the coming years. Anti-immigration sentiment is growing, becoming stronger everywhere, in India, in China, in Pakistan, a lot of countries, even Iran, for instance. What did Iran do recently? Iran sent roughly, a few lakh people who were Afghanis back to Afghanistan. 4 lakh. Yeah, so few lakh people they sent to Afghanistan during the crisis. It was fighting a war, and in that period, so it sent Afghani people to the mercy of Taliban, and they might be prosecuted by Taliban. So despite that, they were sent back to Taliban. So anti-immigration sentiment is strong even in a country, same religion, but even then they are being sent back to other countries. Pakistan sending back Afghans to Afghanistan, saying that no, you don't belong here, you please go back to Afghanistan. And there is a huge conflict in the Durand area between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Big corporates, please remember, big corporates, Ambani, Adani, Tata, whatever you call it, and technology companies are going to become much more powerful than the manufacturing company, because service sector is one area you can become immediately global. So service sector, and as a consequence, data control, the country will control the data. Today, what is happening? Whatever I am speaking, if it's being telecast, then it's going to California, coming back to you on WhatsApp through California. So data is passing through California, coming back to you. All right. So which country controls? Essentially, it controls United States and European country. Now there will be a demand for data localization, but we will say that our data on health, our data on education, our data on pandemic, etc., it will remain with India, and you have to pay if you want the data from us. So data localization is an important concept which will become, that will lead to some kind of tension in the future years. Big corporates, yes, BRICS, and organization like BRICS, now BRICS has 10 or 11 members. So organization like BRICS, in my view, will remain powerful for at least 10-15 years. Why? Because BRICS reflects the transition. BRICS, they are aligned with many of the Western institutes, let me tell you. They are not, BRICS countries are not saying that I don't believe in IMF, I don't believe in United Nations Security Council. They are saying you need to reform. BRICS is not trying to disrupt the international order. BRICS is asking for a better status in the international order rather than completely rejecting the Western ideas or liberal institutions. Places where regional organizations are absent, conflict is very much likely. And I'm talking about the West Asia. Say, for instance, you do not have powerful regional organization, so you have an issue. South Asia, you do not have powerful regional organization. SARC is dysfunctional, and BIMSTEC has not taken a very serious route here. So as a consequence, in the areas where regional organizations are not effective, conflict is very, very likely. G20, in my view, in coming years, G20 will become much more important than even United Nations. Why? Because they are the country which are the most powerful 20 countries, 19 countries plus African Union, European Union, etc. So they are the powerful country in terms of economy, and they will decide the economic rule, economic governance of the globe in the coming years. Cyber contest, I already said, so I'm not getting into that. So what is emerging global politics? Rivalry will continue. Do not expect that India, Pakistan will stop fighting. Liberal international order, diminished role. I didn't say completely fading away. I said diminished role of liberal international order. Yes, one good thing is that expansion of middle class. And one thing positive which has happened even in India, that extreme poverty has gone down, even according to the World Bank data. Recent data, if you see, the extreme poverty has gone down to roughly 6%. It's contested, some of the people debate it, and that $3 or $4, whatever you call it, that is in terms of PPP. So in India, when it is being calculated, do not think it is being calculated in terms of dollars. It is being calculated in terms of PPP, which comes to roughly 65 rupees or something. So extreme poverty, anybody having less than income 65, that has gone down to 6%, and that's a good achievement for India. So expansion of middle class, all of you will be in the middle class category in the coming years, or you are already in the middle class. So parallel institutions in the sense that BRICS, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, G20, etc. So many of the institutions would be created by these countries, like African Union, this this what you call a Southeast Asian, ASEAN, etc. So these regional organizations will become important, and as I said, civilizational states will start asserting itself. What kind of civilizational states, that will be debated according to each country, but that idea will gain prominence in the coming years for certain. Now, how will theories deal with these issues? Realism will argue that is what we are transitioning towards multipolarity, and whenever there is a transition, more conflicts are likely, and as a consequence, you see Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Iran, China, Taiwan, etc. So they will define in terms of multipolarity. Cultural nativist, they will explain in terms of ethno-nationalism, narrow definition of civilization. Constructivists like Amitabh Acharya, etc., they will define in terms of reassertion of history, memory, embedded pluralism, liberalism, etc. Critical theory, they'll argue that capitalism is in disarray. Trump, Modi, Erdogan, they're the symptoms of that, how capitalism, neoliberalism is not working. Post-Western, as I said, you should not understand post-Western as something similar to pre-Western. All right, that mistake should not be made, because post-West is not going to be pre-West. So what type of IR? Now coming to IR as a discipline, so contested IR, people like us, they'll always contest the IR theory, dominance of mainstream theories. Acharya says that greater pluralization of IR, diversification rather than fragmentation. Acharya argues for, as I said, global internationalism, GIR. Global internationalism means not Western, not Eastern, but identifying the diversity, identifying the segmentation and fragmentation. More than fragmentation is the diversification. So you'll see very diversified IR. People will see from South Asian perspective, Eurasian perspective, etc. So those perspectives and area study programs are likely to be important in the coming years. More theorization from the non-West as India becomes important. India will not listen to what Mersheimer is saying, what Kenneth Wald said, what Morgenthau said, or what Alexander Wendt is saying. India will say that please listen to Professor Asmar Beg. Please refer to Hassan Saab, Rahat Saab. So they are the scholars of the future, not Mersheimer. So those are the kind of changes that you'll see in the coming years. Realism to remain important, but history and culture will embed with constructivism. Critical theory will continue to influence IR because younger people do contest the idea of this what you call capitalism. They do support the idea of environmentalism. They do support the idea of feminism. So because of those reasons, critical theory will remain important in the coming years. And post-colonial theory has influenced critical theory to a large extent, let me tell you. So with that, finally, Indian narrative, just 1 minute, because that's not my plan, but it cannot be that I do not speak on India when speaking of IR. So India will the narrative of Viksit Bharat will continue for a long time. Elimination of extreme poverty, this is a welcome change. Middle class will expand. One good thing which is going to happen, that India will continue to grow despite some cyclical disruptions. Why am I saying this is the data that I'm giving you, and my argument is based on data. This is not just my opinion. India in 1995 was how much? What is the size of India's economy? India's size of economy in 1995, 30 years back, it was $360 billion. Is the accurate figure. It's not a speculation. What is today after 30 years? India has grown 10 times bigger in 30 years. All right, 10 times means India's economy is roughly 4 trillion economy, 4,000 billion. 360 into 10, 3,600, right? So it has grown more than 10 times in the last 30 years. So, and despite disruptions, India had a bad phase in 1990s. India had a bad phase again in 2008 and 9. And transition when it was happening to other government, again India. So despite two stagnations, financial crisis, economic crisis of 1998, 2008 crisis, India continued to grow despite disruptions. And in 30 years, it has grown 10 times. So if India grows 10 times in the next 30 years, so India's economy would be roughly 35 trillion economy, right? Roughly 30. Some people say 25, but I think a speculation is from 30 to 55, depending on the growth, etc. So 35 trillion economy would mean what? By the time you guys are my age or little older than me, India would be double the size of what China is today. Double the size. So you can imagine what influence. India would be the second largest economy in terms of PPP and third largest even in terms of constant prices. So you can imagine the kind of role that India is going to play in the coming years. So you guys are at the cusp of a very good India, please let me tell you. And you should be very positive. Yes, we have certain issues, but we have to deal with them. India's global footprints to increase significantly. Nationalism will take the civilizational term. Now, it's not just the nation, but also we are civilization. Looking at IR from Indian perspective, India Way, Bharat Matters, etc., that's already happening and it's going to happen much more. I think we should focus on three things of India, which makes India very unique and different. And you should not take things for granted. You should not take things, for instance, democracy for granted. You should not take development for granted. You should not take diversity for granted. Because the politics tries to homogenize. Politics tries to to kind of create a fragmentation. Our idea should be to focus on democracy, focus on development, and focus on diversity. So with these words, let me stop it here, and I'll be happy to take further questions. Thank you. सर टाइम पे खत्म किया या पहले खत्म कर दिया? हाँ 12:36 हो गया. Yes, it's fine. Yes, so now please feel free to ask me any questions. Yes, sir. Shall I take 3 questions and then answer? Yeah, one by one. चलो पूछो.
Hello, hello,
माइक
hello,
माइक माइक दीजिए.
hello,
Yeah, for the
hello,
purpose of recording also.
hello, hello,
Ah, yes, yes, working, working.
hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
So my first questions is related to this. When you start your lectures, that you start with the post-Western world order. So I am just curious about to know that when we making such kind of the hyphenation, whether it is post-Western or non-Western, it somehow degenerate the non-Western thoughts itself. Why don't we dare to use outrightly Eastern world order or Indian world order and specifically Asian world order? So we need to, such kind of the daring and such kind of the explorations by which we can use outrightly instead of non-Western or post-Western, because somehow we are laden with Western values. Secondly, sir, my question is related to the liberal international order. Sir, you laying out beautifully about the causes. There were many causes you laying out in your presentation, sir. But sir, isn't it strange that the same institution, the same liberal international order, is cursing and criticizing by the same who has created it, by which they establish their unipolar world order. They're knitting all those rules which is closely associated with the soft power politics. So we delve into the more about the causes of those causes. So these causes are not enough to understand the liberal international order. Rather, we again delve into the causes of those causes. Perhaps it might be possible that these liberal international orders is not working according to the best interests of America. And by making or by criticizing, by cursing them, the liberal international order, it is not the declining of the international order. Rather, we can say there is a re-emergence or reconfigurations of the international order. And in that sense, another important aspect, Trump is likely to be a scapegoat for the Americans to change this world order. Because nowadays we are using more Trump, not America as a whole. So please, I need some clarification from your side in this.
Yes, yes, yes. Shall I take a few questions? Yeah. Yeah. Parvez.
Okay. I'm just kind of while listening to you first half and then this one. Uh, I'm reminded of one presentation I did in JNU in 2013 annual International Studies Convention, the one in the last rather.
Yeah.
Uh, the title was Emergence of Bi Multipolarity in International System. Well, Professor Varun Sahni was kind of very critical of that, but it seems uh, because we have history of Cold War, and we have seen Kenneth Walls and then many others who kind of supported the very idea of the stability of bipolarity in international system, right? Um, since the emergence of unipolarity by say in the 21st century, that what we see, what Acharya is also coming up with multiplex world, right? It suggests that there is multipolarity through and through, right? And within that multipolarity, there's certain kind of um, two poles, right? And that what I called by that time bi-multipolarity, right? Means two, I mean there are multiple poles, but within that we see significantly two poles emerging, right? And it seems more relevant now when by that time it was more hypothetical, right? So if you can just reflect on that. Um, Secondly, I mean, when Stuart Hall is writing in Formations of Modernity, a chapter calling West and the Rest, Discourse and Power, right? The very chapter is titled, right? Uh, why for Stuart Hall, rest is a cohesive category, and it is indeed analytical category. But why do you suggest that rest here is not analytical category? um, it puzzles me because much of the exercise that what even prior to global international relations, that what Barry Buzan and Acharya were doing in their magnum opus called non-Western IR theory, right? And then this shift of polyreversal and then inclusive IR, right? The exercise was to consolidate rest, right? And in that sense, rest is more rather inclusive, right? Then calling that what my friend was saying, that the hyphenation, right, of the post-Western or non-Western or so on and so forth, right? Thank you.
Sir, my question is regarding the idea of civilizational state. Sir, how much is this idea of
Name, what's your
civilizational
name?
state?
What's your name?
Sir, my name is Nasir.
Nasir.
Yes. Sir, how tenable is this idea of civilizational state?
How,
Because
how to?
civilizational state, how much tenable is this idea?
How much enable?
Tenable. Tenable.
Tenable.
Yeah. Because it is premised on the idea of culturally embedded self, and which assumes incommensurability of cultures. Cultures cannot be commensurable. So isn't it a dangerous idea that cultures cannot be commensurable? Why can't we think about historically embedded self? Because Gurpreet Mahajan is arguing on these lines that we need to give way to historically embedded self rather than culturally embedded self. Because historically embedded self assumes fusion of horizons. And when it comes to civilizational state, it essentially believes on culturally embedded self. And cultures are
Culturally?
culturally embedded self. So it doesn't foreground the idea of fusion of horizons. So that's why it is not tenable in my opinion. So what is your take on it?
अब
So,
आंसर थोड़ा कर लें क्या?
just a related
Okay.
question to him,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah.
I am Aditya, sir, and I am doing PhD in international studies. Sir, the idea of civilizational state, which you proposed as a future, like the future of international system, there will be a civilizational state. But if we look at the contemporary world, states which are more authoritarian in nature to proclaim legitimacy, they claim that we are a civilizational state. Isn't this idea that the future of international system will be more many states will be civilizational in nature? Rather, they are using this concept to legitimize their existence or the origin. Thank you.
I think can I just answer, and then because there are too many questions, I'll forget. Aditya, let me start with Aditya here from the backwards. This authoritarian states using, yeah, that's again one of the arguments by the Western countries against states which are using civilization as a way to distinguish and differentiate with the Western country, especially United States. In West also, European countries can claim some kind of civilizational identity because they have a history, culture, continuity, etc. The only problem is with the United States, because US in the liberal international order, US was the dominant force, US ideology was the dominant ideology, and to counter that, Russia, China, and to an extent now India, they are using a civilizational state as an idea to counter the Western liberal internationalism. All right, and also this becomes a distinguishing feature based on culture. So many of the people who are from the hardcore right wing, they find this idea very, powerful, because and they in India, in Turkey, in Iran, because right wing regimes are there. So because of that, this idea is gaining popularity. If there is a sudden change in all the places, uh, then it's possible that these ideas will not be as powerful as it looks today. But even when other party comes to power, so other parties learn from the previous party, let me tell you. If Congress comes to power, do not think they'll completely reject the idea of civilization. They will try to modify, redefine, create new features of civilization, but they will stick to that idea of civilization state. Same in the case of Turkey, even if Erdogan is not there, or Khamenei is not there, or Putin is not, they're not going to remain there forever. But if they need to counter the Western, this internationalism, so they will have to rely on something, and that's why they become a kind of fuel for them to promote the idea of civilization state. Yeah. So Nasir, how tenable is civilization state? So partly, I think Nasir, I have already answered this. It is tenable because it has the support of a good amount of people, and the ideas become prominent. See, knowledge and power are, they travel together. Let me tell you. Knowledge without power, you cannot think of a country where a country is not powerful, but the idea from that country has become globally universal. No. Buddhism became powerful when? Not when Buddha was born. Buddhism became powerful as a force when Ashoka started sending his daughter and people to Tibet and to Sri Lanka and to other countries. You get it? So when a certain idea is promoted by a state, so if Hinduism is promoted by India, Confucianism is promoted by China, and Orthodox Christianity is promoted, so then it becomes powerful. Liberal internationalism became powerful when US started supporting as a most powerful country throughout the world. Idea of democracy, idea of liberalism, whatever you call it. You get it? So it has to have support from a powerful country. So in that context, the post-colonial debate on relationship between knowledge and power, that assumes importance. Foucault's entire debate is very, very important. Post Dipesh Chakravarti or what do you call it? This even Edward Said, etc. So how the idea of West became very powerful, because the idea of West was created by the West by a very powerful country, supported by material and military resources. So now Parvez, he is asking two questions. First on multipolarity, and he by the stability of bipolarity. I think there was a period when some of the people, some of the scholars in India and also in other places, erroneously, wrongly in my view, they thought that the world is going to become bipolar. And the stability in the world which was provided by unipolarity, US, before that bipolarity, but after that, there was a phase when people thought that there'll be agreement between the United States and China, and they will provide stability. So that's what you are referring to when you use the term bi-multipolarity. So, but unfortunately, that is not happening. Not happening because of a number of reasons. There is a conflict, huge conflict of interest between United States and China today. Obama tried to create that situation, what you call, China and US together ruling the, but that didn't work out. And now there is so much of conflict taking place in the level trade, economy, global influence, tariff, etc., that Trump has no interest in bringing Xi Jinping to control the world. Trump has another interest, let me tell you. Trump is thinking of bringing Russia to his side so that it can contain China. And for him, because he is coming from political conservatism side, so Christianity, Putin, anti-woke, anti-lesbian, uh, Orthodox Christian is much closer than, say, Xi Jinping, who is a communist. You getting me? So that's why he supports the idea of Russia, not him. Political conservative groups in United States, they support the idea of having a strong alliance with Putin to counter the many of the liberal ideas which have corrupted the West and also other countries. So that first part. Second question, very important, Parvez, and I don't have the sufficient answer. Your question that why the rest cannot be the analytical category. The rest cannot be the analytical category because of the diversity that it has, because of the internal conflict that it has. India-China conflict. Russia and China, they are also a conflict for global influence. In Eurasia, in other parts of the world, there's a huge conflict. And Russia and China together because of United States and NATO. But if Trump plays a different policy, do not think that Russia and China will always be friends. They have fought wars also in 1960s, late 1960s and 70s. Yeah. So I do not see that this rest as an analytical category. How do you kind of compare the features of India and South Africa? For South Africa, colonialism is important, but racism is much more important. For the African politics is much more important. So yes, on the issue of trade, on the issue of climate change, on the issue of anti-colonial idea, we do agree, but that is not enough to theorize. You need much more cohesive structure to theorize political similarity, similarity in terms of culture, historical similarity, but that's not the case. In fact, South Africa and many of the African countries, they think that China and India are doing the same in Africa what US and UK did, France did in the 20th century. So there is a lot of anti-India, anti-China sentiment even in Africa today. If you listen to some of the lectures of Stunkel, Oliver Stunkel, so he clearly thinks that China will pose a lot of challenges to Brazil, and the kind of trade relationship that Brazil had China, that is not in favor of Brazil, and China is an imperial China, according to him also, who is a Brazilian scholar. In India, anti-China sentiment is very powerful, so one can easily take an anti-China narrative. But even Brazilian scholars think that, so given that kind of diversity, that kind of threat, to develop it as a category, analytical category, that's a challenge. Then your question on post-Western, why don't we boldly, you have to be bold enough to refer Eastern world order. But to call it Eastern, what is the unity in the East? China and India fighting together. Japan and China fighting every day. All right, so where is the East? East is, as a geographical category is there, East is a Orient is there. Orient, the way Marx, the way a lot of Orient and Occident, Occident is something, Orient is something that we know. But beyond that, East as a unity, East as a separate category doesn't exist. Attempt was made by who? Attempt was made by Nehru when he had this Asian conference. In 1950s, a conference, late 1940s also there is a conference. He wanted to create Asian unity. It didn't work out. Just few years after India and China fought war. So similarly, Turkey also attempted Asian conference idea of, but also that didn't succeed. So Asia is not a united entity. There are a lot of issues, a lot of diversity, and the way West is united, never think Asia will ever be united. So that's not happening at all. That's why we don't call it Eastern World Order. We cannot call it Eastern because the East is not working the way the West has worked. Liberal international order by same people who created, yes, a liberal international order is being threatened by the same people who created because they think that the benefit of liberal international order is going to China, benefit is going to India, benefit is going to Russia. Trump thinks that India has benefited because of tariff concessions, China has benefited because of free trade, so they are the ones who are changing the law. Trump is the one who does not believe in the liberal politics. So the major threat, in my view, of liberal international order is certainly coming from the country and the leaders who created this liberal international. Other threats are there, Xi Jinping, Putin, Modi, but they are not the major threats. Major threat is internal, in my view. Yeah, when you have such powerful, demagogues, so they try to present when the earlier also India and Indira became the same. Sometimes we don't call it today India's foreign policy. Many times Prime Minister Modi's foreign policy, Trump's America. All right, so that becomes when you have a leadership which is which is narcissistic, which is very centralizing, which is very personality oriented. There is a massive centralization of power at the top. So then you have this tendency. You identify that country's policy with that person. अब सर आप लोग डिसाइड कर लीजिए किसको पूछना। आई थिंक सर उधर स्टूडेंट एक स्टूडेंट से ले लेता हूँ उधर। Oh, that you have asked. So that madam has not asked me earlier. So let me.
A very good afternoon, sir. Sir, my name is Rifa, and sir,
Your name is what?
Sir, Rifa.
Rifa.
Yeah. So my concern is regarding the narration which we have used to describe the content which is cultural based, religion based as so-called civilizational. So how can we define a theory which is totally based on cultural biases, on the majoritarianism as civilized in this 21st century? So kindly edify the justifiable part to define it as civilizational, because for me civilizational is something which is inclusive, which embrace diversity, and which concern everyone as equal. So kindly give your views in this regard.
Got it.
Thank you so
Got
much,
it.
sir.
Thank you. Yeah, sir.
Situations of are in presence of regional inequalities across the power distribution, or the asymmetry of power relations or power distribution across the globe. How this multipolarity or the multipolar order or the that is rooted or that is coming from the rest of in compared to the west, or rather we should not think about that binary between the west and the rest. These rest kinds of phenomenon, how these multipolar adjustment will be aspired to functions in absence of the challenge that is coming against the multilateralism. How multilateralism, multipolarism, and multiculturalism. That multiculture.
इतना difficult question पूछने किसने बोला था?
Suppose civilizational state regime that you were talking about, that civilizational regime has some also the power aspirations to become a power, a regional power, or aspiring a global power. So how does it will respect about the multicultural or the other culture in that sense? Should it not be marginalized to the other cultures? In absence of multicultural, how some civilizational state, what would be their state behavior? It will not be another hegemon in the regions within that multipolar world. Another is that is the somehow that is interrelated with each other. I think that I was able to conceptualize, able to ask the questions whether it will be conveyed or not. Okay, thank you, sir.
पीछे सर एक पीछे है स्टूडेंट।
Sir, my question is like
Name, your name.
I'm Sakshi.
Sakshi.
So my question is like, as you said, history doesn't repeat itself in its literal form, but we do see some structural patterns. Like we have seen decline of superpowers and balance of, as we talk about balance of power. Are we seeing similar patterns in the Indo-Pacific region? So yeah, that's my question.
So,
सर मैं क्विकली सर 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 मैं क्विकली 1 मिनट में आंसर कर दूं फर्स्ट नहीं तो मैं भूल जाऊंगा सर the Sakshi's question that history does not repeat itself and similar patterns the kind of patterns emerging in Indo-Pacific. Indo-Pacific is the hub of activity in the future, let me tell you, because the most important countries of the world in terms of population, in terms of trade, in terms of economic activity, they are in Indo-Pacific now. Uh, America also considers itself a Pacific power, so America is included in that Indo-Pacific. What is happening that many of the people think that the reason why Trump is behaving like this, that he's no more interested in Europe. He thinks that the world is going to be America, China, India. So that's why his focus now is on Indo-Pacific, where he's trying to create Quad rather than focusing on European Union and NATO. He has stopped funding NATO and he has started focusing on Quad. So many of the people think that Trump is, but I don't think Trump has that much of foresight to have that kind of vision. But yes, Indo-Pacific is, so what you see in Indo-Pacific is the real multipolarity. China wants to become the dominant power along with the United States, wanted to become bipolar there, but India is saying no, we are the Indo-Pacific power and you cannot rule us out. And as a consequence, India decided to join the Quad and become an important partner along with the United States to counter China. So a real contest of the global politics, not war, is happening in what you call it Indo-Pacific. All right, so in Quad, Malabar exercises, if you see the economic, 60-70% of the activity is in the Indo-Pacific now. And 3 countries are the most powerful country of the future. So that kind of multipolarity you're going to see in the Indo-Pacific. And this has never happened in the past. So history is not repeating here. India, China, America, they were never the superpowers the way they're going to be in the coming years. Well, yeah, so yeah, there is a power transition theory, and Kugler and a lot of people have worked on that, where they argue that when there is a shift from bipolarity to multipolarity, the conflict is likely. For instance, when the First World War was to Second World War, in Second World War, what is happening? Germany is powerful, Soviet Union is becoming powerful, so world is becoming from unipolar Britain as the superpower, now it is becoming multipolar. So that led to crisis. All right, and similarly, they say that when you have the bipolar world, so some kind of Cold War stability was there. But when multipolarity emerged in the late 90s, so conflict started happening in Kosovo, Ukraine, Russia, a lot of other parts of the world. So that transition, but that's a realist perspective of the world. And when the realists argue, they argue that in the transition period, conflict is very likely. But many of the people disagree with that. Many of the people say that multipolarity does not necessarily mean just the power distribution. It also means different centers of culture, different centers of wealth emerging, and that may not be necessarily destabilizing. All you need to create a proper regional multipolar institutions. If those institutions are not there, then probably the conflict would be very likely. So that's the argument coming from different sides. Coming to Alam sir's question, sir, आपने कौन सा concept छोड़ा मेरे लिए बताइए? He has asked on multilateralism. He has asked me on multipolarity. He has asked me on uh, multiculturalism. अब ये तो सर कुछ छूटा ही नहीं इसमें. Well, multilateralism, according to Robert Cohen, liberal scholar of international politics, all of you know, After Hegemony is the book. So in which he argues that multilateralism, when there is a coordination of foreign policy among 3 or more states, so minimum 3 states, and there can be more. All right, so then you have the what you call multilateralism. And multilateralism has certain features. One is reciprocity, that reciprocity means that if you do something for me, I'll also do something for you. So that is based on collective sharing of the issues, where, for instance, European Union will have collective foreign policy, collective security policy, etc. So John Ruggie and a lot of other people who are coming from constructivist side, they define multilateralism as shared norms, shared culture, and then diffuse reciprocity, etc. So multilateralism refers to that kind of policy coordination among three states. Multipolarity is possible that there are various poles, but there is no coordination. It's also possible that the various poles, but also coordinating with each other. All right. So what we are saying in the post-Western, what we call it post-Western world order. So we are saying a kind of multipolar world, not in terms of just distribution of power, but also in terms of what you call different civilizations, diversity, etc. So that world is emerging, and the transition is leading to that kind of world in the coming years. That's for sure. So that's about multipolarity. And you also asked multiculturalism. Multiculturalism is again a debunked concept now, because many of the European states, multiculturalism is not just about different kind of culture coexisting peacefully. It's not, it has a certain meaning. For instance, the French policy of multiculturalism has been rejected by a lot of scholars of political science, because they think that it promotes certain kind of hierarchy, it promotes certain kind of grand idea, and people do not necessarily dissolve into the existing idea, existing system. So multiculturalism has a completely different aspect, but if you mean here multiculturalism as multipolarity, recognizing different global cultures or different civilizations, then that is happening. So the world which we are going to witness, there will be multipolar, different civilizations, and embedded pluralism of Amitav Acharya. It says that the major power, great powers, will be tolerant towards different civilizations because they don't have choice. US can do nothing to China. US can do nothing to India because of its influence and power. So that multicultural, multi-diverse cultures will coexist in the coming world for sure. Rifa, finally. Excellent question, Rifa. Thank you for asking me this question. Can we have a theory of a particular civilization which embraces diversity? I think, this is very philosophical question, that if civilization is very particular, if civilization focuses on diversity, it differentiates from other cultures, so can we have a theory? And the answer is theoretically no. You cannot have a theory of a particular civilization. You can have a theory of civilization which is general in nature, that what you call civilization, what are the features, but you cannot have a theory of Indus Valley civilization. You cannot have a theory of Vedic civilization, right? Why? In history, we don't have theories, right? History is about particular context. History is about particular culture. Theories emerge when you generalize. Theories emerge when you explain in terms of taking all the cases into account, and you try to simplify and you try to give a general picture about the entire universe. So that is possible. But if you talk about cultural exceptionalism, civilizational particularism, then you will not have a theory. You don't have a theory of Mughal period. You don't have a theory of Mauryas, because you are talking about a particular context. You don't have a theory of India's foreign policy. You can have a theory of international politics. You can have a theory of on foreign policy general, but you can never have a theory of a particular context. So you cannot have a theory of particular civilization, and that's a, yeah. But yes, if you talk civilization in general terms, so you can have a theory of civilization, but you cannot have a theory of Indian civilization. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, so there is no dispute there, Rifa. We totally agree. We totally agree with you, because the idea of civilization, it takes the resources of civilization are coming from where? It's coming from history and culture. So they are integral to any argument on civilization. The question that we should ask, that history itself is a very selective subject. History, what it does, that it's like an ocean. I want to catch this kind of fish, so I'll go to a particular kind of ocean with a particular kind of net. So in history, you have all kind of ideas. So whether you want to pick up Indus Valley civilization for promoting India's ideas, whether you want to pick up Mughal civilization, you want to pick up Vedic civilization, or you want to pick up Buddhist culture and civilization. So that is done by the historian of the period, and that's used as justification. So Yes, sir, I got it. Somebody said very correctly. Okay, we'll finish. History, yeah, history. Somebody said politics without history is rootless, and history without politics is fruitless. So we cannot have politics, we cannot have civilization without history for sure. Yes, I think that's what I would like. Last question.
Yes, sir. My question is, sir, is S-barrier order collapsing or it is re-emerging after the Brexit or the rise of Hamaरी बातें in France? Because she is also advocating that after, uh, when she is going to win the election, she is going to move away from the European Union because the creation of European Union was against the idea of Treaty of Westphalia. Okay. So next is the next question is in the context of the 25-1 provision, cover and aspire. In that book, he made an argument that it is not the hierarchy which is controlling the world, or which is basically running, or we can say governing the world, but it is the aspire which is responsible for governing the world. So can we say in this context of post-Western world order that aspire which was responsible for governing the world from the West now basically shifting its center from west to east. That's why we are talking about the rise of China, rise of India, first level the countries. Moreover, you highlighted one thing in your slide that you are highlighting the projections till 2100, the India is going to here in terms
Population.
of population. So I read a book, Empty Platter, written by Philip Brownman. He is the advocate that he has specifically mentioned in his book that India's birth rate is declining, and nowadays we are having that birth rate at 2.0, and 2.1 is replaceable. So we are below that. So in context of the modern scenario, how we can basically move to that 2100. Moreover, sir, as you highlighted that economic growth, we will reach to 10 times. So in 1995, if we were $360 billion, so it was just because of the liberal policies, the economic liberalization, new economic liberalization, or the new economic policies which we adopted after 1991 that we had a growth of 10% or 10 times. Okay, but after this anti-globalization move, after this nationalization, how we can anticipate that again we are going to run a 10 times of this the current we can say GDP? Are we going to take the American GDP as a stationary or the constant? Because they will also increase with the same rate. They are going to basically value the rate. So these were my questions.
Sir, absolutely fantastic question, sir, and very mind-boggling. Yes, and very valid questions that, if India's population demography, can you project in a very linear fashion the way it has been done? First, when it's being projected, some of the growth stability has been taken into account. Because what it was projected, India is already 1.4 something something, right? But the projection is only 1.5, right? So it's growing in between, but then again coming back to, so that diminishing of India's growth rate has been taken into account when projecting that figure of, and it's projections, sir, and projections can fail, it can change. So I'm just taking that projection by and large would be true, not exactly, it's not never going to be exactly true. Same about economic growth, that economic growth has been projected, and it is based on a very optimistic figure, but does not mean that if there is a crisis, say for instance China decides to fight with India, the growth rate will go down 20 years down. I'm not worried so much about Trump's protectionism. I'm much more concerned if India decides to fight with China, or if Pakistan decides to fight with India and China supports Pakistan. That would be really destabilizing for India. Trump can put the tariff, Trump can follow the policy of protectionism, but India will find market in Africa, Brazil, China, and other places. We'll create an alternative system of trading. So we are not, India's trade will be impacted how much by United States? We have a roughly 30 to 40 billion that trade would be impacted. That will not impact 3,900 billion dollar of economy. 30 billion rate does not matter much. We'll find alternative sources, market trading mechanism also will develop. But if India decides to fight with Pakistan for a long time, if India decides to fight with China, the growth rate would be the way what is happening to Russia. Russian growth has stabilized, Russian is kind of stagnated. So Russian growth is not happening. So my concern is much more of India getting engaged, and US would be happy that India engages with conflict with China. So we have to avoid that kind of situation. Sir, your second question was about Westphalia, post-Westphalia. Most of the scholars agree that no, we are not in world order because remain important. Cooperation, etc. Ideas of Westphalia, they will remain important. Next 15, 20 years, that's not happening. I don't really know. Uh, it's not the hierarchy which is ruling, but so I think the world is moving towards a square, that's for sure. What we see today, that will change. Whether China and India will kind of hierarchy, that's possible.
ये बात असलम साहब you will lunch.
So I think क्वेश्चन ले लेंगे, ऊपर वाले बोले थे नहीं लिया था उनका कोई.
किसी स्टूडेंट का
But they're complaining that left out. Just quickly, 1 minute.
स्टूडेंट्स का फाइन.
Mike.
चलो बोल दो.
Sir, I want to ask about the rise of India. You said about the rise of India. In your last 2 slides, you were talking about the rise of India. Sir, I just want to know how will it be possible if the current regime, or the governments coming after it, do not take care of minorities, tribals and other groups? How the projection that you have showed will actually come into picture? This
Okay,
is a small
thank you. India is rising not because of Prime Minister Modi or Rahul Gandhi. India is growing because of you. India is growing in the night. Because younger people like you, the people who are working, the people of middle class, the people who are contributing to India. So irrespective of Prime Minister Modi or Rahul Gandhi, India will continue to grow, and there is absolutely, I have no doubt about that. If comes a regime where India stops growing, remember that the regime will not survive. It has to show that it is growing by certain percentage, only then a regime can survive. So it's growing because of you guys, because of us, and not because of Prime Minister Modi or Rahul Gandhi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we would like to, on behalf of all of us, I'd like to thank Professor Rajan Kumar for sparing time coming over here and engaging us for more than 3 hours here this morning. So thank you, sir, for interacting with our students, and whatever questions remain, you can talk to him during lunch because he'll have to leave immediately after lunch for Delhi. So thank you all, and we close this session and we assemble here at 3 after lunch. Thank you. Photo bhi chahiye? Yes, they'll have a photo.